Hi folks, Joseph Kursky here with you to talk about guiding principles for instructors as you guide students into the modern GIS era. What do I mean by the modern GIS era? It is thinking about GIS in a deeper way. It's not just learning desktop software. Tools are important, but the tools are to help us to understand our complex world and our communities and every scale in between the world and our communities, and to take action to make better decisions to build a more resilient, more equitable, healthier, happier, more sustainable world. That is the purpose of learning these tools. Now, the modern GIS era is, as this graphic I hope well illustrates, moving you from thinking about GIS as this desktop-only tool that's sort of a niche technology that required a lot of years to learn how to use and to teach and to do research with, into the modern GIS framework. GIS is a platform. This is a good illustration of modern GIS that I hope is instructive. First of all, think about the modern era. You've got apps and maps and people taking action. So in this case, you've got the Surfrider Foundation, who within a few hours registered 10,000 participants to document what they were seeing one morning on the beach in 2021 in Southern California, i.e. oil leaking from a pipeline. The point is, what did they do? Did they look through manuals? Did they create a PDF in a book or in an article? Time is of the essence, right? Oil is leaking. No, they created a GIS-enabled web mapping application that engaged citizens. The Surfrider Foundation organized them, could participate. They could say, here's the situation. Here's where the oil is right now in real time. And then the oil could be largely contained while it was still at sea and siphoned off before it impacted the coast and the resulting soil, wildlife, water, etc. So that is an example of modern GIS. Lots more examples I could give, but that is, to me, one of the best examples of what this actually is. GIS today, Geographic Information Systems today, includes all of these things: maps, apps, infographics, dashboards, field tools, spatial analysis, symbology, classification, communication, and engaged people making a difference. That is GIS today, and lots more slides I could mention on that alone. But some of you probably recognize this correctly. This is the 1854 John Snow cholera map of London, where the little hatch marks mean, unfortunately, cholera case in that household, and almost always it was fatal, sadly. The point is, this is one of the first documented maps showing maps as not just reference documents like where is London, where is Soho, where is Algeria, where is Colorado, etc., but why things are where they are, and also to take action. So maps as analytical tools, not just reference documents. This is one of the first examples. Now, fast forward 160 plus years later to modern times, spatial analysis, engaged people making a difference, is still core to GIS. So sure, the tools have changed, the data have changed, but analyzing, asking questions, gathering data, making recommendations, taking action still matters. It still matters. As another example of the spread of GIS beyond a niche desktop-only tool is the JHU, Johns Hopkins University COVID dashboard. This dashboard has been seen by literally everyone on the planet with a device, a phone, a tablet, a laptop, multiple times by every one of those people. The views are in the trillions. Why? Because this is so incredibly useful, looking at changes over space and time for a very serious subject of our time, COVID. You may ask, well, Joseph, have the changes in GIS, this modern GIS notion that you're talking about, really had a dramatic impact on the skills required in today's workforce? I'm here to tell you that yes, I could provide lots of other examples besides this, but this is just a snapshot of a couple of real-life job applications, postings, announcements, job announcements, and you can see what I've highlighted here. ArcGIS Online Story Maps, publishing data layers, analyzing, creating solutions for wastewater, for health, for public safety, for ecoregion analysis, etc. There's from literally A to Z, archaeology to zoology, you find GIS and spatial thinking being desired, being in demand. Why? Because this is such a valuable spatial thinking along with applied geotechnologies. The geographic approach is incredibly valued around the world in multiple disciplines. And modern GIS includes all of these things. Again, I could have a longer list, but thinking about requirements gathering. What do you need for your project? What budget do you have? What staff do you have? What problem do you need to solve? Data as services. What does that mean? Do I need to download everything? Can I stream some of the data in? A combination of those things. What do I need to gather myself, etc. And then when I'm done, how do I share this with others? Application configuration. You need to develop, like the Surfrider folks, develop an app that people can go out right now and start collecting data into that app. Being thoughtful about how you create it and who you share it with, of course, but creating applications. Automation. How do I automate some of these things? How do I figure out what the power grid demand is going to be a week from Tuesday in Texas or wherever? I've got to be able to get real-time data, and I've got to automate a lot of that data and a lot of those processes, because I'm not going to be able to do this manually when there's some sort of crisis or when there's a large demand, etc. How do I use enterprise GIS? What things do I need to have on premises? Because maybe it's health data, maybe it's personal identifiable information or other sensitive information, for example, about sacred sites or whatever it is. Public safety, etc. I need to figure out what I need to have on my own premises, my own servers, and what can I share with others, and how can I embrace this whole notion of the cloud for data, for analysis, for sharing results. Let me speak to 4 points of guidance that I hope is instructive as you move forward in the modern GIS era. First of all, at some points in the not too distant past, there was one pathway of teaching GIS, with some variation to be sure, but there was sort of one way to do it. The intro courses, the intermediate courses, the advanced courses, the remote sensing courses, they all had sort of a commonality to them. This was predictable. It didn't change all that much from year to year, but now there are multiple pathways. This is challenging to be sure. People ask me every other day, faculty, for example, saying, what should I teach in my first 2 weeks of the introductory to mapping course, or a smart planet course, or a geotechnology course? Or also, how do I infuse GIS into business, to civil engineering, to health, to data science, etc.? There are multiple pathways. There are multiple approaches. I have a document here called 10 Strategies for Instruction that I hope will be helpful to you as you move forward. Make your GIS instruction holistic, engaging, multiple scale, etc., and others that I have in there that I hope that's helpful to you all. This is challenging to be sure. Can you create a survey 1, 2, 3, let's say, about tree species on campus and share that week 1 of class and have your students go out and collect data and then show how that data that they collect feeds into a map, into a dashboard, and maybe even a story map? And then in week 2, you can say, remember that survey that we did first week of class? Now I want you to create your own survey of something you care about, community gardens or graffiti or dangerous intersections or urban greenways or whatever in your community and or on your campus. So this works in the hybrid online world as well as face-to-face. But you create one, and then you create a dashboard, and you create a story map, and you create an ArcGIS map, and you do some analysis on that data, proximity, overlay, buffering, etc. Yes, you can do that. There's no one way to do it. Depends on your course objectives, your program objectives, your university, technical, tribal, community college objectives, etc. Okay? Now that, again, is challenging. Okay, well, how do I fit this in? Well, there's plenty of resources to help you along this pathway, some of which you create yourself, some of which you actually use from libraries of content. For example, the Learn ArcGIS gallery. So here's something to think about that is funny, but it's also instructive. Did you just assign a Learn lesson, learn.arcgis.com, as a lab? Maybe. Is there shame in doing that? No, folks. let me put it this way. With the rapid change of GIS in terms of its functionality, with data as services, with the expansion of GIS into different disciplines, there's no way that you or I'm an instructor also, can possibly create all the resources that you need and to curate all those resources. There's just no way. So take advantage of the fact that there are other resources out there. Sure, be careful about which ones you use. Make sure you vet them and test them and so on. But there are others, not only are they out there, but they're maintained and curated, so you don't have to spend the biggest part of your time creating and then curating all of those lessons. I hope that's clear, and I hope that's instructive. There is nothing wrong with you using some of the other resources that are out there, not only in GIS, but I would argue in other disciplines. We've just been advancing too much to go to the era of you actually creating every single one of these things yourselves, okay? So feel free and don't feel twingy or hesitant to use other things. Let me give you an example. I was teaching cartographic design recently at a community college, online course. I created about 80% of that course myself with my own content. You are very creative instructors. You love creating content. That's one of the reasons why you became instructors. And you add value based on your own experiences that are unique that nobody else can add, okay? However, you do not have to, you should not have to spend all of your time creating every single thing yourself. So in this case, in my cartographic design course, I reached a point where I said I could create a lesson that meets objectives in, I think it was week 10 of the course, that the students go out and use ArcGIS Pro, create a layout, create some cartographic elements that we've been discussing in the course, and show me what you've learned up to this point using an example like that. I could have created that lesson, but guess what? There was a lesson in the learn.arcgis.com gallery where that met my needs. It wasn't exactly what I would have done. It was 95%. So I saved those 5 hours or whatever it would have taken me for me to create that, probably more actually. And with those 5 hours, I was able to create my own unique content, and I didn't have to do that. See what I mean? So you can mix and match these things as appropriate. Also, I just wanted to encourage you that number 3 there, modern GIS, this whole modern era of GIS that we've been speaking about, provides, I think, an opportunity for us to rethink how we teach, how we consider even lessons or instructional materials. Now, just another personal story that I hope is instructive. I had, just like I'm sure you do, you GIS instructors, long lessons. Now, at one point in the not too distant past, that's all the students had. They had your lessons. That's how they learned how to geocode and buffer and do all these other things and solve problems in GIS. Well, guess what? That too has changed. It's not just the lessons that give them instruction. In fact, as time goes on, I think the lessons need to be shorter and shorter so that you can say, this is what the problem I want you to solve, and show me this, and this, and maybe share it in a 5-minute oral presentation, create a story map or something like that, that shows your thought process and what you've decided and what you've learned from that activity. If you get to the point in that activity where you don't know how to geocode, guess what? You go to the documentation for the software. You go watch this video or something like that. I found, even without my own prompting, that the students do that anyway. They were skipping my heavily screenshotted lessons. And again, touching on the whole curation thing, do you want to spend all your time updating screenshots? And the students don't pay attention to that anymore anyway. Very seldom, because the screens change. The software evolves, and students are used to that. So rather, spend the time on the spatial thinking and what your objectives are, and the unique things that you can create that maybe nobody else can. So as an example, I had it ended up being 40 pages as I updated it over the years, but the standard going out to census.gov, getting the data, the demographic data, and joining it to the geometry, the census tracts, the zip codes, the block groups, etc. That was a character building and a skill building exercise, to be sure. And for many years, that was the standard workflow. That's how you had to do it. This is a bit difficult for me to say because I used to be a geographer at the Census Bureau and I love census data, but that site is still as clunky as it was 15 years ago. And now there are ways to teach joining. For example, I've got a couple of essays about you get some data of your own, you join it to the cloud. You join it to, for example, living atlas of the world layers. So you're teaching joining. Oh, now I've got 10 attributes, whereas before I did the join, I had 2 attributes. Or a spatial join was point on polygon, the number of earthquakes in each country with a spatial join. Again, joining it to data that's out there, not necessarily on your local device. So the point is, well, points are, I know it's hard to give up those long lessons, but there are ways to teach those activities in a shorter time frame, and thereby freeing students up and your time up to focus on other things that are important in your courses and in your programs, okay? So rethink how and why and where we inject certain objectives into our courses and programs. Change accelerates, but as I showed the John Snow cholera example, spatial analysis and wise decision-making still matter. So despite all the changes, take heart. Don't think that I'm saying toss everything out. There are core things, map projections, building it, being organized about the data, being ethical about your decision making. All those things still matter, okay? Also, a last nudge, critical thinking about data, methods, scale, communication, how you communicate, who, why, how, when. Data and societal issues are important. So I and my colleague created a data book on public domain data, and the blog is associated with that, and it's called the Spatial Reserves Data Blog, and here's a graphic about the book, is about 3 things. Where to find data, spatial data. How do I know if I can trust that data? So evaluation of data. And then finally, societal issues, location privacy, copyright, ethics, etc. So that's what this resource is all about. Every week, there's a different topic in this blog. So I'm very keen on having students understand where data comes from, how they know if they can trust it, and also thinking about the greater societal issues. What I hope is important, valuable guidelines here. I created, along these lines of the theme of this video, a complete first course in Modern GIS. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to illustrate some of the things that I'm talking to you about. I created it using story maps. There's 37 story maps. Each one of these tiles in the course is a story map. The readings, the videos, the quizzes, the activity, the hands-on activities. It's 95% readings and hands-on activities. There's some quizzes that are very short. Actually, the bulk of the 95%, maybe 65%, is hands-on activities. I really am keen on teaching GIS by doing. It's one of the reasons why I love GIS. It is a very hands-on kind of engaging tool. But this course gives you some sense of what I'm talking about here. What readings do you include? What activities do you use? In this particular case, all the activities are actually with ArcGIS Online because it gave me everything that I needed for this complete first course. So I hope that's valuable. So I wanted to summarize by saying, take heart, GIS is changing. Students' needs are changing. Universities, higher education, K-12, primary and secondary education is changing as well. GIS actually matters now more than ever. There are ways that we can engage students with GIS in this modern era in a way that's not going to completely overwhelm you, but you need to think about how you're approaching instruction differently than in the past. I hope that's clear. I hope that's relevant and thoughtful and helpful to you, and I look forward to your comments. Thanks.